What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another new episode of the Last Wave Podcast. We are into season two. If you're new to the show, we dive into topics like ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, nerd stuff, and conspiracies. As always, thanks for listening. It means a whole lot. Check us out on our Facebook page as well as our Twitter and Patreon.com. Patreon is a subscription service that helps content creators like myself. It's not going to pay the bills, and I have it listed at very cheap. It's like $1 or $2 a month cheap. We're always putting cool stuff onto our social media accounts as well. As always, thanks for listening. And again, you can check us out on patreon.com. Now, we have started doing Patreon exclusive episodes. I know I just put up not too long ago the UFO Files, which is a book I came across. It's an older book, and it's a book I came across at my local favorite little secondhand store. So we're just going over some really cool cases from that little book. So definitely check us out over there. And like I said, if you sign up, I think it's $1 to maybe $3 a month, and you get access to our extra episodes. So it's kind of cool. Again, it's not going to pay bills, but it does help us have like a little bit extra for our time doing research, because we do spend a lot of time between me and the co-host and some other friends I help, send us certain topics to go over. So today we're going back to the hidden world, one of my favorite things to talk about. Uh, if you're new to the series, definitely check out the rest of them. Basically, my theory is that the hidden world is a world of, the world of fairies, goblins, gnomes, even Bigfoot. It's all connected, and they all have something to do with one another. So, all of these are just really cool stories about different creatures, different entities, different beings that would fall under the description of the hidden world. So today we're going over a really cool one, and it's kind of America's first fairy, more or less, first fairy type creature, and they're called Pukwudgies. Now, stories of these little buggers have popped into my research more than once. They ironically resembled the Colonoro from a previous article that's on our blog, the Last Wave blog, and you should definitely check that out as well. The main difference is that these beings are from North America and have been around for hundreds of years. Pukwudgies, also known as Bagwagini, were said to live in the wilderness throughout North America. Native Americans believed that the Pukwudgies were creatures that once lived in harmony with humans and had turned against us. Legend says that the reason the Pukwudgies hate humans is because of the Wampanoag tribe. They adored Maushuk the giant. And take a side break there. There is a lot of reports of Native Americans and giant tribes and stuff like that. So I'm not trying to like lead you off on like a weird little, I didn't mention giants thing, but that's where that comes from. They apparently this tribe interacted with giants that were said to be in the North Americans at that time, and basically they had friended this one giant, and this tribe was irritated by the Pukwudgies in the area, who they considered just to be a small nuisance. Even though the creatures were only trying to be helpful to them, the tribe asked the giant to get rid of the Pukwudgies. So he threw them out of the area quite violently, even slaughtering some in the process. And they have been giving humans trouble ever since. Pukwudgies translate to person of the wilderness, and they are said to be small creatures ranging from knee-high height to about 3 feet tall, with human-like features, yet they sport larger ears, noses, and fingers. Their skin has been described as gray and smooth, and they have often been compared to trolls or goblins. The small creatures have a variety of tricks up their sleeves to taunt or even harm humans. Pukwudgies can appear and disappear at will. They can confuse humans. They can create fire. They use poison arrows, and they can use magic. They also lure people to their deaths. They have the ability to shapeshift into dangerous animals like cougars, and they allegedly can also turn themselves into a combination of creatures and look half human, half porcupine if they choose, which I thought was very interesting as a connection to the Colonoro, which is, I want to say they're a South American, or no, African, the African jungle, one of the two. It's been a while since I wrote that blog article, but they're a creature that when you I guess when you read the description, it kind of sounds like Sonic the Hedgehog, but either gray or brown. Basically, just like I described, a small creature. They have like spines going down their back. There's allegedly, and I know I've either spoken about this or written about it in the blog, but there's allegedly a Navy SEAL video from a number of years ago, and the video can't be released due to the secrecy of it. But allegedly, this group of Navy SEALs comes in contact with one of these small tribes of Colonoro that the locals have been talking about, and apparently they even hunt down an animal, and it's on video. Again, I don't know if it'll ever be released, but this is just one of those internet rumors. So the Colonor actually sounds really cool. Like I would love, actually I don't know if I would love to see them, but excuse me, I had to take a drink there. But they do sound kind of cool. Apparently their spines even rattle, like they shake violently whenever they're agitated, which I thought was a really cool detail. And when you're listening to stories like this, it's that little bit of extra detail that makes them kind of believable because there's no reason to report that. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason to say that little bit extra. So it makes it all the more believable. Uh, their magic is said to be similar to that of other Fey folk. One story I brought up on the blog was something I'd heard years ago, maybe on a podcast or coast to coast. I can't recall. And it was in a state that was in the northeast part of the United States. One evening, just before sunset, a guy was taking a hike through the forest. The man noticed everything around him got eerily quiet for a moment, and that's actually called, in certain circles, that's called the Oz effect. It's when like everything stops and goes quiet. And he noticed everything around him went quiet for a moment. He then started hearing whispering along the trail way ahead of him. He said it almost sounded like singing. He couldn't quite make out the words at first, so he kept on walking. As he followed the trail, the voice became clearer. It was now a sing-song type of voice, and the words, though distant, sounded to him as Weus, or something of that nature. Weus, something of that nature, over and over, very slowly, methodically even. He continued now, more cautious than before, but he kept going down the trail. Kind of, he kind of wanted to see at this point. I mean, obviously I would too. He kind of wanted to see, that natural human urge to know exactly what's happening. The voice continued, but now seemed to come from, let's see. Oh, sorry. Skipped ahead a little bit. He eventually did see something ahead of him. A small creature, a couple feet high, standing on two small legs. The creature, he couldn't see it very well. It was still in some underbrush, but it was standing just on the trail. And it was clearly waving to him, or motioning to him. The man was stunned, obviously, but curiosity again got the better of him, and he felt drawn to the small creature. The voice continued, but now seemed to come from the creature itself. The words became clearer the closer he got, until he could see that the creature was indeed calling to him. The creature had pointy ears and a slightly pudgy body, with leathery skin, and its mouth was again making these slow chanting noises. The man said once he heard the words clearly, they shook him a little bit, and he was able to break the trance that he seemed to be in and run back down the trail into safety. The words, "Come with us," trailing off behind him. Now, this is a rare example of someone who escaped the clutches of a Fey encounter or abduction. Usually people go missing or they pop up days later, not remembering anything. And this is persistent throughout the history of Fey folklore. So we hardly ever hear about what happens prior to these encounters. Maybe that is why the story kind of stuck with me, is just because it's a little bit different. Native American lore is very, very well descriptive of these creatures as well, which is why I think they are the first, if not one of the earliest known Fey beings in the Americas, at least. There are a few things to remember about these creatures. Pukwudgies have the ability to, again, they have the ability to shapeshift, which is super important. Um, and again, they are not friendly to us. So, further notes if you see a Pukwudgie, you should leave it alone. Anyone who annoys one will be followed around by the creature, apparently, and will either fall victim to its nasty tricks, like being stalked and having memories forgotten, which I thought was really interesting. They can erase your memory, which again, if you go back to other Fae folklore, this abduction situation happens, and the people that do come back strangely tend to come back around 3 days later, and they don't remember anything. So it's almost as if they are erasing their memory, or they picked people that wouldn't remember what happened. It's kind of weird. But anyway, or you could either have that happen, or you could meet a much deadlier ending. If you do annoy a Pukwudgie, then they may even kidnap your children. Apparently, they can push you off a cliff. They can attack you with short knives and spears, or, as we mentioned before, poison arrows, which is just, I couldn't imagine. You're walking through the forest and you see just a little group of, for lack of a better term, goblins chasing you with knives and poison arrows. What an insane moment that had to be. They can also use sand to blind you, so they're cheap fighters, apparently. They just use whatever they can. So that, I don't want to talk bad about them because, you know, but they can also apparently persuade you to commit suicide in some reports. So they are commonly found in areas with other forms of paranormal activity also, which I thought was very interesting. They've been sighted near Fall River, which is close to the home of Lizzie Borden and the Axe murders. They've also been sighted in the haunted Moundsville State Penitentiary. And this does say in, sorry, in my notes here, it does say in, so that's very interesting. And that's in Indiana. And Round Rock in Texas, where Bigfoot also has allegedly been sighted. So these little guys, I mean, they match a lot of descriptions of other fairy type beings from around the world, like goblins or the Colonaro. They're known to be mischievous and tricky to deal with, like most Fae type creatures. And it is really rare to see legends like this in North America, and those that are especially so documented throughout history. So yeah, these little creatures are pretty cool. I really like the idea of them. I don't necessarily want to see one, but I really like the idea of them. And a quick note, because that's pretty much all the information I have on them. But a quick note on, again, the legitimacy of stories when you hear these little details. So again, in the notes and in the stories, it does report that they often congregate and are often sighted around areas that already have some type of paranormal activity or some other form of high strangeness. Now, I may have this in a story coming up, or I may have already touched on this before. I have so many of these types of stories; it's hard to keep track. We're in year 2 of the podcast itself, so there's quite a lot to have spoken about. But there is a story in Ape Canyon, and I believe that's out west, where these miners were going to look for gold. And allegedly, one of the miners saw a Bigfoot up on a cliff. They shot at it. It ensued into this big overnight, basically assault by Bigfoot creatures. And you see that type of thing. And of course, the men escaped in the morning, but it was completely violent. The Bigfoot type creatures were trying to tear down the house and trying to break in. But the men did escape in the morning, never to return to that area. And that is a fairly well documented account too. I believe one of the men wrote a book or two about it at least. So you see this correlation between fairy type creatures and other high strangeness. Now I say that with the gold mines because there are other reports around the world of Bigfoot being located near gold mines. It's almost like they're guardians, and I believe it was the Nature Guardians episode that I brought that up in. So that makes sense now. So it's almost like they're guardians of nature, and you see that in again I mentioned it in that episode from World War II with the goblins attacking the the airplanes, reaching in and tearing out pieces and wires and stuff because it almost when you think about it seems like they were protecting and trying to stop the bombing of what would be their homeland. which obviously makes sense. They would not want that to happen. So again, you see that detail is pretty interesting that you find Pukwudgies around places where high strangeness happens, and then you have a whole bunch of other Fey type creatures in the same genre that are around high strangeness areas. Now you also have this, and I did a small note of this on an episode for um, this series on Amazon, and I think someone's on YouTube called Hellier, which is where Greg and Dana Newkirk, who run the Traveling Paranormal Museum, they're really fascinating people. I've listened to them on a couple podcasts. Obviously, I watched Hellier probably at least twice all the way through, but they get a report from this guy in Kentucky, and about he's seeing goblins in his yard. And they send pictures, vague, blurry pictures, but there apparently is a Hopkinsville goblin case as well. That goes back years. I think it was in the middle of the 1900s, where people reported seeing goblins too, and it was on the other side of the state. So you have these goblins reports, and if you've seen Hellier, congratulations! It's one of my favorite. It's a slow burn, but man, it's so good. It's so good. Um, but it takes some of the Goblin reports, and by the end of it, you don't know what you're into. There's occult stuff, ghost stuff. I mean, it could be anything. Basically, high strangeness. You see these reports of goblin and fey type creatures, again, in a whole state where there is a large amount of high strangeness. A lot of the state is also part of the Mammoth Cave system underground, so there's high deposits of quartz and limestone and things like that. And you also see that tied into. So precious minerals like gold, as with the Bigfoot case, limestone, quartz. It's possible that they're natural energy areas, and that these hidden people, Fey type creatures, have something to do with that, or they live off of that, or they found their home there. Either way, it's incredibly interesting, and it's incredibly interesting to note small details like that. And again, if you ever hear a story, I could sit here all day and tell you I saw a Bigfoot. It was 7 feet tall. It was gray. It was gray hair. You know, but if I sit here and tell you on its chest it had a white patch of hair that was in the shape of a spade, and I could smell exactly what it smelled like, and this and that and this and that, and its eyes were actually orange instead of yellow, that kind of thing. It just lends so much more credence to a story. So I'm a little bit more inclined to believe reports like this, and reports of the Pukwudgies, obviously, because they go back hundreds of years, than, just your casual story. So it's pretty interesting. Again, I find all of this incredibly interesting. Anything with the Fae folklore, it's not just legends. Like, it's got to have some type of beginning, and there's just too many reports. It's like UFOs and aliens. It's just too pervasive. Everyone can't be lying, and there's obviously more realms and I don't know if you want to use this for multiverses or dimensions, whatever. There's obviously something out there that is different than what plane we live on. And I think whatever is there, whether it be if you take DMT and you see the clockwork elves or the beings that they talk about, or if you see a straight up gnome walking down a forest trail, or a Pukwudgie in the middle of the woods saying, "Hey, come with us. Come stay with us a while." I mean, it's just there's definitely something there, and I hope everyone finds this as cool as I do. If you don't, then just check us out on the next episode. If you do, then keep listening. Research it for yourself. It's so fascinating. As always, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one a little short, just because it's just a one-off on the Pukwudgies. We've got more stuff coming up about other hidden world type creatures. So I know I have at least one more episode ready to go of this. Real quick, as an ending note, as always, thank you for listening. Check us out on the Patreon. Life, I mentioned it in one of the other previous episodes. Life has thrown me a weird curveball here in 2021, and it's so difficult to get time to record. Like, I have so little free time. So when I do this, I absolutely adore doing this. It's my favorite hobby. Anybody that takes the time to listen to this, just thank you so much. Please bear with me on limited posting and stuff. I'm trying to get at least 1 to 2 episodes done a week and getting them up to where it's at least 1 episode posted a week. And I'm trying to do more. I'm trying to do the best I can. But again, it's just, I don't want to get into it, but there's a lot going on. So wish me luck. Wish us all luck in this new year. Let's see how 2021 goes, because it's already going crazy so far. And we're a month and a half in. So good luck to everybody. Again, if you're interested in this, check out the other Hidden World series. It's fascinating stuff. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.